Creating encounters by using a map. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. I redrew the map. I wasn't particularly happy with the way I'd drawn the map in the previous video, so I redrew the map using some fills, and it looks a little bit better now, and I've added a bunch more detail. But let's talk about creating a bunch of adventures. So we can zoom in just around the city. Let's assume that the characters start with a city, and I've drawn, this is farmland, and that's what the grain symbols are showing, that grain is available there. There's saltwater fish available here and here, and there's a small fishing village there. So just looking at the map, what do we have? Well, we know that Ankeg, or I can't pronounce the name, but Ankeg, they grow underground. They're sort of like a great big ant thing that they grow underground, spit venom and so on. There was an early Dungeons and Dragons game that you talked about them and how that they made the ground more fertile, and the farmers sort of had this love-hate relationship with them. So we obviously, just from right here, we see that right outside the city we've got some farmland that the Ankeg would want to have they would live in, and some of the farmers in the area would want you to come in and get rid of the extra ones, but not to kill them all off. And of course, as you're searching through the underground burrows where the Ankeg, they may lead into another natural cavern, which leads into a buried underground ancient cavern of some sort. So you have an entrance to a dungeon just right here, just from the Ankeg. The other question is up here. We have this space up here. Let's say that we've got grain that's here. That's going to attract various predators, but maybe not predators in the normal sense. We could have centaurs coming in here who would be grazing on the grass because they would find the young growing shoots wonderfully tasty, because they would, sort of an interesting question, what do centaurs eat? But we could have horses and centaurs, and that brings up the interesting question, if a centaur mates with a horse, is that bestiality? Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But you have there. So we have freshwater fish. This means that there obviously could be some other creatures in here. There could be some fishermen could want some aid in dealing with some of the sea creatures that have come into this. So let's turn on I've got the hex grid turned off so we can actually see let's turn on the hex grid. So we see that this is actually a fairly large bay, and because each of these hexes are 5 miles across, so that's a fairly large bay, and so that you obviously would want to have some possible protection from sea creatures that come out and are fighting with that. And you're not that far from shore, so it's not that long of a distance. We have another little small fishing village that would be up here that would, they obviously wouldn't transport by land to the city. They would ship across to the city by just going across the bay or whatever. And so that this opens up a whole bunch of things. Anybody who's read like any of H.P. Lovecraft stuff, we have a love-hate relationship with the city, so we could have like the Dunwich Horror right up here. Now we look over here. Let's see, let's zoom out a little bit, and we can, this was an interesting section up here. So when I drew this, I thought about this. We've got a village that lives by logging. Here, these are the symbols for logging, and obviously they would cut down the logs and drag them over and put them down into the river, and they would go downstream. Now, what happens if the city down here, which is just off to the edge, let's see if I can scroll right a little bit. The city, the logs are not making it there. So what happens with that? They've got something that's obstructing the logs, so that they would ask them to either go upstream or go along the river to go explore and find out what's happening there. Again, we have more farmland and a small little village here, and they could have again more predators in this area here. Now here we have the road going along close to a forest, which is a perfect hideout for thieves and robbers and so on up in this area here. So we'd have that. We've got scrubland in here, which you could have various creatures living, which may come down and come from the other side and attack the road that way. So we're just looking. Let's scroll out a bit. Again, I tend to when it displays it with the hex, it sometimes at the it's always the same thing. So we talked about, let's go up here. We have a small village with freshwater fish, and we have seafood. We have shellfish, so that they could be attracting this, obviously attracting creatures from the sea. There could be mermen or shawagan, or however you pronounce it, that's there, because this is living. They may have some farmland off to this way, or they could be, they get the food from the ocean, and they're somewhat self-sufficient. But that gives you some idea what you could have there. There could be, they could hear somebody's asking for some help up here. The oyster beds are not growing properly or whatever, because there's something is interacting with them. So let's zoom out again. Let's see where else we can zoom into to find some interesting things. Oh, we have a volcano up in this area, and this could be affecting the river. Some things could be flowing down. Some minerals could be flowing down the river, which could be causing it to change color and be nasty. And you may want to find out what's causing the lava flows to affect the course of the river. That's obviously something that could be happening there, or that's I think the closest river, or this river also. So we've talked about this one. What else can we do? We have somewhere in here we would know that there would be, normally the way I've drawn this is, I've drawn the rivers, and along the rivers you have cities. A city needs water often, and you have grassland and a source of water, and so cities often are built along the water that's here and here and here, and then small towns show up at crossroads or by bridges, because they could obviously make a living by charging tolls doing the bridges. Here, down here, we have another village that is got a bridge, and it's got freshwater fish, so that they could be shipping again by catching fish and seafood and so on, and could be shipping it down or consuming much of it. So you would have fish. What could be happening there? Well, again, they're close to a volcano, which could concern them. But they're also what is their relationship to the elves in the area? Because they're in a very forested area here, and the road goes along, just skirting along the edge of the forest, as you can barely see there. And what's the relationship to the elves in this area? Could this be a problem? So we can come up with this. So let's see, what else can we've got the swamp. So we come down here. We have a town here, which again has freshwater. There's freshwater fish here. There's a town here with grain, and there's a freshwater. Now, one of the things I forgot to put, I was going to put here, so I can say that this town here also produces beer. The advantage that this is it's the water. Okay, for any of those of you know, that was it. Olympia beer had It's the Water, which is why they're so they have the source of fresh water, which would provide that for making the beer. They're close enough to that, and then they're close enough to the shipping lanes that they could ship it and go up to the town up there. But you have a swamp that the river goes through, which as sort of I've shown, the swamp actually gets very close to the opening of the river. So some things could be from the swamp could be affecting the shipments of beer, which would obviously get everybody in town upset, because you really want to have your alcoholic beverages, don't you? So let's see, what else can we do? So this is just, like I said, I put this together. I threw down a bunch of symbols. I threw down where things made sense. Some of this goes back, if this was when if I unhide the scan, this was the original map that I drew probably 20 years ago or more. And then I drew it up in Campaign Cartographer. And we can do that. We can actually turn on the sheet effects, which takes it a little bit longer to draw. And we can see that it lightens up and smooths out some things. Produces a more aesthetically pleasing effect with some of the things around the rivers and such. So we see, and the fish, and it creates a nice looking map. So we can see how various things like lumber here, which affects there. So this would obviously be transporting probably, it could transport them from this small village by boat, or it could go by road, depending upon which way they wanted to go. And what it was, because it's a small town, so they wouldn't have as large docking facilities there. But you have the opportunity with every little note, in essence, how did I come up with this? Okay, I drew the mountains. That was the mountain ranges that I wanted, and I drew the forest. And I drew some forest sections here. And the river, so you get the rivers, the mountains, and the forest. The grasslands sort of made sense because this is where you would plant the grass. There's probably water, there's runoff. It's close to where the cities would be. So you've got there, I planted the shellfish because that seemed logical to me. You can argue that. The same thing with the fish there, and freshwater and the grains. Like I said, this would make sense because the beer would be here because they would have fresh water and they would have a nice source of grain. This place here also could be producing beer, and that would actually be closer, but we'll say that's not where they're doing it because they don't have a brewmeister there. This is a larger city, so they would have somebody to do that. This city here has is on a road that goes through this narrow valley into off the map to there. So where would the trade routes be? I mean, here we have, obviously there would be a trade route coming out here, and where would it go? Well, you could probably have a city to the north and a city to the south and maybe a city farther east. So you would have obviously options where those ships would be coming and what they would be taking. What would be shipped from here? Well, we see that we've got lumber coming, we have some grain, we have fish that are this possibility, we even have beer that's there. We could also plant some olives and wine. Those are other things that could be, we could have. What would be the common commodities that would be traded? What would they be traded for? Each trade route offers an opportunity for adventurers to act as guards. Each caravan or merchant ship has the potential of being robbed by pirates or brigands or thieves or something like that. All of those things are looking for men who have skill with arms, shall we say, who could defend them. We have a swamp down here. So that's why I say you create a world and it opens up a whole bunch of potentials for adventure. So we start the party, you've adventured into the big town, and you have a whole host of opportunities in town, and you hear about all these opportunities not that far away. And you can just wander around and adventure and run into adventures that are based upon the geography of the land. And it doesn't take that much effort to do that. Now, you can Obviously, like I put down here, if I zoom in down here, I dropped a symbol for something interesting. If it takes a second to draw, we have a mountain path going up to here, plus we have a volcano. We could enter other kinds of symbols or things like that. When you draw them, you have the opportunity to put things in there. That's where you can create an adventure, but you don't have to railroad the people into going on that adventure. They hear rumors about it throughout by doing things, doing other adventures. Say, for example, like I said, they come in here to kill some of the Ankheg or whatever they're called. Up in this region here, they find the path, the caverns, the pathways that they've dug lead to another cavern, which is natural, which has connects to some underground fortification or something that was once built. It's basically a dungeon that they find some hints about something that happened down here, which would lead them in this direction, and you have all this distance to go. So just by drawing up a map quickly, and you can do it with pencil and paper and a bunch of colored pencils, which is what I originally did, and so on. And if I go back, one of the things that I haven't put on here, if I go back to the scan, and through the mountains is a tunnel. Now I haven't drawn that tunnel in, and that's something else I need to do. But that was one of the things that I originally did was when I drew this, and it would be easy to add. I just wasn't sure how to, and it led through this from here to here. And why would there be a tunnel? Because that would lead that there's a road off in this distance here. So you would perhaps hear about the ancient abandoned mines in the mountains that are there, that have untold wealth, but something evil, the hints of the mines of Moria. So what happens is that you can, by just simply drawing up a map, it opens you the opportunity to create a large number of adventures, and everywhere the players go on the map, you can introduce them to new and competing adventures, or adventures they can come back to later. That's why I said don't create adventures, create a world. Thank you for listening to my video. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.